On my boat, the last unicorn and myself had survived Cyclone Winston, the most powerful cyclone to ever hit the southern hemisphere. And as bad as things were after the cyclone, I lost my dinghy and the outboard motor and the life raft. The total was going to be about $20,000 to replace those things. It still seemed manageable until the extraction process. And as you can see, it didn't go so well. And I had very strong feelings about this. The damage from the cyclone I really could accept, but this was sort of just a really bad blow. I wasn't in a position to financially repair the boat. I didn't want to leave it. It was my home. It was my commitment, and I just didn't want to walk away from it. Here I brought it up to the dock, so I paid to dock there because I didn't have a dinghy to get supplies, and I could work on it more easily. You can see there's some superficial damage, but really my main concern was the mast, trying to find a mast somewhere or repair the mast. So that's what I was concerned with, very concerned with, and that's what took up most of my time. So you can see the back of the boat here. At the very back, the silver item is called the wind vane, and that's a very essential part of the boat. It allows the boat to steer itself when you're sleeping.
I'm Phil Light, and I wanted to make this short video just to show people my mast and what happened to it. Some of you may not know much about Sailboat Mass, what they're constructed of, and so I was just going to talk a little bit about it. The mast is a very important thing because it serves several functions. It supports all the sails in the boat, of course. It also contains all the wires, the navigational equipment, the lights, the radar, and so forth, which run up and down, as well as the halyards, which are the ropes, which are essentially lines that control the sails, and they're quite valuable. They're not average ropes. So it also serves to balance the boat because it's sort of a counterbalance to the weight down below. So I'm just going to show you now the damage that occurred. This actually occurred after the cyclone when the boat was being removed. But I'll just go and show you so you have some idea of what sorts of things I'm dealing with right now. Okay, so right here, this is where the mast goes into to the boat, and it's been sheared off there. Now, the idea, if it can be repaired, is to get a sleeve that will fit inside of here, extending about that far, and then there's another section still in the boat, about 5 feet long, and it would be kind of like that, so it would be inside. Now, this one's not too bad. Now, the next one, because there's 3 brakes, the next one is just a little ways up. And by the way, this black here is called the spinnaker pole. As you can see, it's not doing so well. Anyway, the mast is definitely the most important thing. It's very expensive and very highly engineered piece of metal. So this is the second brake, and as you can see, it didn't break cleanly. It's a jagged brake, and it's going to be a little difficult to repair this, to say the least, because a section will have to be cut out, and that's going to change the size of the mast. Now, but probably the worst of the 3 brakes is this one right here. This is one end. The other end is down here, because they're not in 2 sections. But if you look down here, you can see that end that I just showed you has got to fit inside of this brake right here. So it's going to be quite difficult to machine a piece of metal that can fit inside there. You can see all the wires and stuff. There's like lights on these spreaders that are used for navigation and so forth. This bracket right here holds the radar. So all the wires, these are all electric wires, but there are also these wires which are called stays and shrouds. Now, some of them had to be cut, so they'll have to be probably either replaced or somehow re-machined. So those are the three main things. I'm not sure. Hopefully, there'll be someone here that can do that. But this is Fiji, and the resources are pretty limited. It's also going to be a bit of a challenge to get the mast onto the boat in an upright position. Normally that's done with a crane, but there are no cranes on this island, so there seems to be an alternative idea about using a couple of boats, the halyards from the boats, to lift up the end of the mast and then placed it into the hole in the deck. So you can see it's not going to be an easy task. It's definitely going to be quite difficult.
Well, as you probably guessed, it was not going to be possible to repair the broken mast. The breaks were too severe, so I was kind of resigned to having to find a mast. Now, I removed these are the winches. They're quite valuable. In the meantime, there were still a couple of boats in the lagoon that were needing to be freed and floated again. So here's the process. There's the same boat, just had been floated. Here's the boat that was right next to me. This was actually the last one to get into deeper water. I think I was really about the worst of all the boats, though. So the excavation went on, but I knew that I had to go and search for a mast. So I went to the other large island, Viti, and I met some people over there. This is an Indian lady I met. We visited a temple. I watched my friend play in a rugby match, but mostly I was looking for masts. Unfortunately, there were none. While I was there, I picked up my friend Vibo, who was coming into the airport there, and he came from Holland.
Hi again. I wanted to make a video to show you what's been happening with my search for a mast for my boat. I just got back from the other island of Viti, and I went all over the island. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to find a mast. There were several, but they were either too large or too expensive or made of the wrong material. So really my only option left in this country, Fiji, is to get the mast off of the boat that I'm on right now. This is a wrecked boat and it's been claimed by customs, so I'm going to have to buy it intact and remove the mast from it and then dispose of the hull of the boat. So you can see that the boat is pretty bad shape, but the mast is still pretty good, and it's close to the right dimensions. It's quite old, but assuming that we can get it off the boat and onto mine, which is going to be quite an endeavor, it should be enough to get my boat going again, because I can't really go anywhere without a mast. Fortunately, on the other island, I met up with my old friend Debo, and he's going to show you his picture right now.
Hi there, good morning. I'm gonna help Phil out to have his old mast back on his boat.
Okay, so that was Debo. We met in Nicaragua about 10 years ago, and he very generously came here from the Netherlands, and he's going to be here for a month, so that's going to be good. Now, the boat itself, as you can see, it's it's on land, and so it has to be refloated, which is going to be also pretty much a difficult task to accomplish. So anyway, I'm just about to go to customs right now, where I have to put in an offer for this boat, because I have to buy the whole boat, and it's actually going to take quite a bit of money to get the boat, and then I'm going to have to arrange for a crane if I can find one, and all the fittings, because the rigging, for instance, you can see the rigging.
So Bebo helped me for a little while. He wasn't there for the removal of the mast. Now here's the boat getting ready to be worked on. It was quite a interesting, difficult process. The access was hard. We had to get permission to do this. Here are some of the people that helped. These Fijian guys would help me every day. This is my really good friend Phil, and he was just great. This is Jim Van Cleve. He helped with the boat work and line handling. This is the welder, Ritesh, and he cut the mast base. And this is Grant Gardner. He put up ropes in the trees to lower the mast onto. But mostly this guy here, Alistair, he's from New Zealand. He was my main support and help. He was very knowledgeable, but beyond that, he was just a very calm individual. And I really went to Alistair a lot because he would always assure me if I was nervous or was starting to give up hope. He would always encourage me because he knew a lot about boats, and he this is him with his new daughter, and he was a very generous guy. He helped the other boats when they had to be extracted. He used his boat and his own resources. So this was the process. That's Alistair's boat in the background, and there was a line tied from the top of the mast to Alistair's boat. Ritesh, the welder, went down and cut the base of the mast, and Alistair drove the boat towards the mast, and that served to lower it. And it fell into the tree where Grant had put the rope. My job was to sit up on that upper edge and to release the shrouds, the wires holding up the mast. And that was a very nervous thing for me because there was so much pressure on that. I had to do it with a wrench, and the very last one I remember was very scary to release. But eventually we got it down, and we used a small crane to maneuver the mast off of this old boat. And the Fijian guys really helped me with this because it was very heavy. It took several people to move it. So the mast was put onto this flatbed truck and transported to where my boat was only less than a mile away. And here it is at the boat yard, and you can see it had to have a lot of work done to it. But meanwhile, it was my task to get rid of the old boat, and to do that I had to pretty much dismantle it, gut it, and then have my friend Ritesh cut up the boat because it was made of steel. And then every night, me and the Fijians would sit around, we'd burn the rubbish, and it was a nice way to end the day. We'd usually be drinking a few beers. As you can see, we ended up drinking a lot of beers during this procedure. But eventually, the boat was cut up, piece by piece, and hauled up the side. Here it's almost down to the water line. And once the steel was up on the embankment, we got another truck and hauled it off to the dump. And that was the last we saw of Heartbeat, the boat from New Zealand. But here's the mast, and the first thing to do was to remove all the paint. And you can see on the top is my old mast, and on the bottom is the new one, or the replaced one. You can see there's a lot of corrosion there. Here are some of the fittings, and I'm not much of a mechanic, so I had to label everything and where it came from because it would eventually have to be replaced. I also moved the winches from my old mast onto this replacement one. But the biggest thing was the base of the mast because it had to fit into a small socket. So Ritesh welded some pieces together, and we were able to get a part that would fit into the socket at the base of the mast. Now one day I went to the village nearby where my boat was wrecked, and the people were celebrating because Fiji had just won the Olympic rugby gold medal. That's Kava or Yakona, and this is the Fijian flag. So the mast was about ready. I had done everything I could there, but there was no place to really install it. The crane was too small, so we loaded it onto my boat. It stuck out about 15 or 20 feet on both sides, and then we went about making the long voyage to the boatyard, which was, I'd say, about 100 miles away. And it was quite a strange journey. I'll relate that in my next video. But I wanted to say, you know, what you're seeing here is probably the worst thing that can happen to you. I know some of you may be contemplating getting a boat and going sailing, and I really would urge you to do that. There can be some challenging moments, but it's well worth the effort.